The first morning sunlight spilled across the empty corridors of the city's tallest office building, but inside, a storm had already erupted. The janitor, a quiet man named Daniel, had spent the night worrying, but he never expected the storm would come from his own boss. Daniel had always been the kind of man who moved through life helping others quietly, unseen. He cleaned floors, emptied trash, and fixed broken doors without ever asking for thanks. But yesterday, when a young policewoman had collapsed in the alley behind the building, bleeding from a serious injury, Daniel had acted without hesitation. He lifted her into his old pickup truck, drove her to the nearest hospital, and stayed by her side until doctors arrived. For him, it was instinct. It was what any human would do, yet that instinct had cost him dearly. The next morning, as he mopped the lobby floor, his boss called him into the office. The words hit harder than any slap. Daniel was fired. His crime, in the eyes of a man obsessed with rules over humanity, was simple. He had interfered, helped someone who was not his concern. Daniel walked out, carrying his few belongings, the sting of injustice burning in his chest. But even in that humiliation, his heart remained unshaken. He had done the right thing. If you believe in kindness, in helping others even when the world seems unfair, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Grandma Dearie. Daniel returned to his small, run-down house on the edge of the city, the weight of unemployment pressing heavily on his shoulders. Bills piled up, his stomach ached with hunger, and the echo of his boss's words haunted him. He could have curled into despair, but instead he sat on the porch and stared at the distant skyline, silently promising himself that no one could take his compassion away. That night he barely slept. The image of the injured officer's frightened eyes seared into his memory. The following morning, a low hum of engines and flashing lights shattered the quiet of his neighborhood. Daniel opened the front door and froze. 10 patrol cars surrounded his small home, their officers moving with a tense urgency that made his heart race. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering and pointing, their curiosity heavy in the crisp air. Daniel's mind raced. Had the officer's injury been worse than he thought? Was he in trouble with the law for doing what he felt was right? As the officers approached, Daniel's fear intensified. But then, a familiar voice cut through the tension. It was Officer Harper, the woman he had helped the day before. She was walking toward him, her uniform crisp, her expression both relieved and determined. She had come to make things right. The city had learned of his selfless act. The same officers who had once been strangers to him now surrounded him not with suspicion, but with gratitude. They handed him a commendation, a certificate recognizing his courage, and an envelope containing a reward. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt seen. But the true change wasn't in the certificate or the money. It was in the ripple effect his kindness had created. The story of a janitor who risked everything to save a life spread through the city, touching hearts, changing perceptions. Donations arrived at his door from strangers who had read about his bravery. Local businesses offered him work, not out of pity, but out of respect. Even his old boss, witnessing the public admiration for Daniel, was forced to reckon with his cruelty. Daniel, however, carried no bitterness. He had learned that true dignity comes not from titles or money, but from living a life aligned with one's values. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's small house became a hub for community support. He organized food drives, volunteered at local shelters, and offered free maintenance for elderly neighbors who could not afford repairs. Every act of service reminded him, and everyone around him, that compassion was not a weakness, but a quiet kind of strength. Children waved as he worked, inspired by a man who had nothing material to give, yet offered everything that mattered. The turning point came when Officer Harper visited again, this time with her partner. She invited Daniel to speak at a city event honoring everyday heroes. Standing on the stage, Daniel looked out at a crowd of strangers whose eyes shimmered with hope and admiration. He spoke of simple acts of kindness, of courage in small moments, and of choosing to help even when it's inconvenient. Tears glistened in the audience, and Daniel realized that the life he once thought insignificant now radiated meaning far beyond what he had imagined. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Grandma Dearie. Your engagement can help inspire someone else to act with kindness today. Before you go, leave a comment sharing a moment when someone's kindness changed your life, no matter how small. Stories like Daniel's remind us all that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they carry mops, first aid kits, or just the courage to act. And in a world that often seems cold and indifferent, those small acts of bravery shine brighter than any spotlight. Daniel's journey was never about recognition, wealth, or power. It was about choice, the choice to be human, to help without expectation, to trust in the ripple of good deeds. And in the end, when the lights of the city glimmered against the night sky, Daniel's heart felt full. He knew, finally, that one man's courage, fueled by kindness, could indeed change the world, one life at a time.